Hi everyone, Chris here, and we are back at Keighley Track. For our final rep session of this 5 and 10k tune-up that we're doing. So we're going to be doing 3 400 meters, 3 200 meters, and then another 3 400 meters. And the aim is going to be that we do the last 400 meter rep at exactly the same pace as we did the first 400 meter rep. We'll probably speed up a bit for the 200s, but it's always something to focus on when you come and do your reps or your intervals, is that you make sure that the pacing of each interval is always the same, whether you're doing 6 or 12 or 20, whatever it is. If it ends up that you do 6 intervals, 6 reps, and then you die and you have to slow down, you may as well have only done 6 reps. So trying to just keep that consistent. So the first set, certainly I'll be thinking about, let's try and go maybe like 80, 85%, knowing that I'll need that little bit of extra at the end. We're doing reps, so it's supposed to be speed work. We're not trying to tax the aerobic system. We don't want to end up really out of breath and feeling like we can't go on, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is to build our strength and our efficiency. So we want to keep it light, keep it fast all the way to the end. We're also going to be thinking a bit today about some form things, so I want to focus on 3 things today. And it's always good to have something to focus on as well as your reps, something that you're planning to work on. So today we're going to be thinking about posture, we're going to be thinking about arm swing, and we're going to be thinking about floating the knee. It's that part of the run cycle where we push that knee forward and we float through the air, and we try and hold the knee in front of us for as long as possible. Running in the street flies again today just to warm up, and then I'm going to change into those dragonflies and run all of the intervals in the dragonflies this week and see how that goes. Okay, so let's finish this warm up and get going.
So a drill that I always like to start off with is this high knee skip. So you drive your knee forward in the same way you would in your running gait, but then you flick your foot out, and with a straight leg you pull your foot down to land underneath your hips. It's really good for working on your foot strike and just livening the legs up, ready for your run. In between any of your drills, just make sure you keep yourself moving with a nice little light jog. Another drill I really like is straight legs, so just lean back slightly and then bounce along on straight legs, and you should feel your glutes and your hamstrings engage here. And we're just waking the glutes up so that we're really making use of those when we are running. You can modify this drill by doing straight legs, but also with one leg driving forward. So just alternate which leg does it, take 3 bounds and then drive the opposite knee forward, and that's going to help you to get drilled in that you're going to use your glute to push as well as your knee driving forward. Do some side to sides, wake the glute medius up. Make sure you do both ways. In terms of stretching, I don't tend to do any static stretching before a run, but what I like to do is some dynamic stretching. So here's what you might call going bowling. So you just put one leg out straight in front of you and you bend over and you go bowling, and you should feel a stretch on your hamstring. I also like to do some lunges with just throw the arms in the air to feel a bit of a stretch on the hip flexor. Nothing too serious and nothing too strenuous. After I'm warmed up, what I like to do is some bounds. Running is plyometric, it's about bouncing off of the ground, so I like to just warm up the legs with some bounds, some forceful bounds. You can see I'm trying to travel as far as possible there, each leap. So today we're working on some running cues, and the first one is to do with posture. We're always told to run tall with our hips pushed forward, but it's not always obvious exactly how we go about doing that. It is really important to run upright. You can see here that I'm bent over at the waist and leaning forward, and you might say chasing my head, you often hear people say. And this is problematic because you can see there's not really much room for my knees to drive into, so my leg is staying quite low. And that also promotes a bit of a heel strike, which means then I have to drag my foot through the ground in order to propel myself, rather than getting that nice bounce from a forefoot or a midfoot foot strike. So how do we go about getting that upright posture? Well, for me at least, one way that I like to do it is that you stand up tall, you throw your arms in the air, and then you swing them back, and as you do, you push your hips forward and you go onto your toes. And that should help you to approximate that upright posture. And you can do it as well with a knee drive if you want. Another thing that I think about is trying to just pull the belly button in a little bit and concentrate on my hip position. So you can see here, I am definitely more upright than I was before. I'm not bending at the waist, and there's so much more room for my knee to drive into, and you can see that my thigh is getting a lot more towards parallel with the ground, which is helping with my propulsion and helping with my knee drive. So there's lots of different cues. Another thing someone once said to me is, imagine there's a piece of string tied to your head and it's pulling you up. But I like to think about pulling my belly button in and straightening out my spine. So the next cue is to do with arm swing. So it's really important we get our arm swing right. And what I like to do is imagine that I am pushing my elbow back to make a little triangle with my body and my upper arm and my forearm. So if you imagine that your elbow is the tip of an arrow that's pointing back, you're going to push that back so that you make that little triangle. And you want to try and get it so that you can imagine someone looking from the side can see through the gap between your forearm and your upper arm through that little triangle to see what's on the other side of it, that there's fresh air between. It doesn't really matter where you carry your hands. Some runners carry their hands like me. I carry my hands quite high, others down by their hips. That doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you are pushing that elbow back. So here you can see I'm doing the same thing, but I'm just pushing my elbow back with my hands down by my side. But it's the elbow back that really matters. So again, think about that point of the elbow being an arrow and pushing back. That's a good cue that I like to use every now and then when I attend to my arm swing. And then the final cue that I want to talk about is floating your knee. And this is a cue that really works for me. When we talk about knee drive, a lot of people drive their knee directly up, but actually you've got to drive your knee forward. So something I like to think about is trying to get my knee out in front of me in my float phase and just let it float there for a moment. It just stays in front of me just a little bit longer. And the longer you can have your knee out in front of you, the faster you'll go, the more your glutes will activate. So let's see how the pros do it. Here is Haile Gebrselassie in an awesome slow-mo of his running cycle. And let's watch what he's doing. Obviously he's standing very tall, but let's look at this knee drive. So he drives the knee forward and then look, it just floats in front of him, just in that float phase. And you can actually see his knee. Let's look at the right knee as it comes through now. So it's moving, and then as it extends in front, it just pauses and the shin swings out. Notice as well that he's driving that elbow back and he's getting a beautiful triangle there. We can see through his arm to the mountains behind. Now let's look at another pro, Letesenbet Gidey. This is more recently in Valencia 2020 when she was setting the women's world record for the 5,000 meters, and her form is just incredible here. She's coming up on the end of the race and look, we've got a nice knee drive forward and that knee is just floating in front of her, just pausing in front as the shin swings out. If we look at her arms, we can see that it's pointing back, and again she's making a really nice triangle with her body, upper arm and her forearm. And we can also see she's definitely not leaning forward from her hips, she's nice and upright. There's some forward lean, but it's coming from the ankles. And I tend to think, just don't worry about forward lean at all, just let your body do what it needs to do. But look at that, just beautiful knee drive each time, and we can see the knee pausing as the shin swings out. Here she is from a different angle, and again we can see that elbow driving back, that triangle with the body and the arm, and those knees floating forward. She's floating the knee as she goes. Now another elite runner here is Joshua Cheptegei, again in Valencia in 2020, this time setting the world record for the 10,000 meters. Of course, Joshua Cheptegei also holds the world record for the 5,000 meters. One of the things I love about watching this clip is just how relaxed Joshua Cheptegei looks as he goes around the track. He's 18 minutes in here, so he's over 2/3 of the way through, going an unimaginable pace, faster than I can sprint on the track. And he just looks so relaxed. And let's look at his form. He is very clearly, he's nice and upright, and he's driving those knees forward. And let's just have a look at the knee float. So you can see the knee goes forward and it just pauses as the shin swings out. He's just pushing it in front of him. He's got that arm pushed back with that nice triangle, and each time he pushes his arm back we can see through the gap in his arm to behind him. Let's have another look at a different angle. Here he comes through, and again we can see that knee driving forward from the hip, not up but forward, just floating in front of him, and the elbow pushing back, making that nice triangle behind him. And now let's watch as he comes down the home straight to finish his 10k and set a new world record of 26 minutes 11 seconds. Just absolutely unbelievable for us mere mortals.
Right, that is it. That is the last rep session in our 10k 5k tune-up. I feel it went really well. Tough session, doing your 400s, you know, you can keep a moderate pace, still tough. You do the 200s in the middle and you speed up a bit, and then you've got to go back to the 400s. Yeah, it's a tough session, and but good session. Managed to keep the pace pretty much nice and even all the way around. And next week we move on to our VO2 max intervals. So our reps have been building that top end speed, letting our body know that we can run fast, working on the form that we're going to translate into the slightly slower running for our 5k pace, but not really working the aerobic system. This is more anaerobic speed work. So next week, that's when we're going to move on to do our VO2 max, and that's going to develop our ability to make use of the oxygen that we're breathing in, make use of more of it so we can go faster. So we're starting off with some 5-minute intervals. Skipped an AC. I'm going to be cursing my name. Okay, until next time.